we'll have a lovely afternoon. Kiss the world goodbye, and away we'll fly. Destination moon. We'll travel fast as a light till we're out of sight. The earth will be like a toy balloon. What a thrill you'll get riding on my jet. A destination moon. We'll go up, 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 up. Straight to the moon we two. High in the starry blue. I'll be out of this world with you. So away we'll steal in my space mobile. A supersonic, a honeymoon. Leave your cares below. Pull the switch, let's go. A destination moon. Too. We'll be high in the starry blue. I'll be out of this world with you. So away we'll steal in my jet mobile. A supersonic, a honeymoon. Leave your cares below. Pull that switch, let's go. Destination. We're flying high up in the sky. Destination moon.
Bart, we just showed, a few minutes there of rockets basically just not getting off the ground, and yet we are to believe from NASA that shortly after that we got all the way to the moon and landed there. Did nobody ever question them on that?
No, people were predisposed to wanting to believe it. After all, Star Trek was on the air at the time, and people were beaming up and down everywhere. And during the Vietnam War, this was a great pep rally and distraction, something for America to believe in or root for. And, of course, there was our rival, the Soviet Union, who launched the first satellite, the first animal, the first man, the first spacewalk, the first crew of 3, the first of 2 spacecraft at the same time. For every 20 hours we spent in space, they spent 100 hours. 5 times the experience. When you start thinking about it, you realize that the space shuttle only goes as high as Florida is wide, only about 200 miles above the Earth. If you had a foot globe, that would be about 1/2 of an inch above the globe. And yet we're to believe that nearly 4 decades ago, with less computing power than in my Walmart watch that I bought for $20. My Walmart watch has more computing power than the rocket at that time. And they're claiming they went 100,000% farther than the space shuttle has ever gone,
right,
and never killed anybody.
286,000 miles.
Yeah, the moon is about 250,000 miles, so round trip it's about 500,000 miles. And the space shuttle goes up to about 200 miles where the space station is, and it's killed 14 people.
Yeah.
And yet we landed on another world 6 times and never killed anybody.
Bart, what about the Russians? I mean, did we fool them as well? I guess they don't know whether we really did or did not go.
Well, I think one of the motives initially was to fool the Soviet Union. The Star Wars Missile Defense Program, according to the General Accounting Office of 1994, said that it rigged tests to make it seem more advanced than it really was. The aim was to fool the Soviets. Well, the same thing was done about the moon missions. We had a pair of 2s, they had 3 3s, and we bet $500,000 to get them to back off. I think later, though, through espionage, perhaps the Soviet Union, Israel, and China found out that we did not go to the moon, and potentially those 3 nations are blackmailing us. That's why they don't release this information to the world free of charge, because then it has no value. What they do is they blackmail administration after administration. And there are recent cosmonauts who are gone on the record and say, they did not go to the moon. I mean, Lindy flew across the Atlantic in 1928. Do you think it would be 50 years before someone flew across the Atlantic a second time? And NASA's claiming that it's going to be 50 years before they can, quote, return to the moon. They insist that we have to have a space station built first before we can go to the moon. Well, then how do we go to the moon the first time without a space station? In fact, von Braun's own mathematical calculations that he published 3, 4, 5 times said in order to reach the moon in one trip, you'd have to have a rocket weighing 800,000 tons with a greater height than the Empire State Building. Saturn V at its most weighed 6,500 tons, and that's a discrepancy of about 30,000% on his math.
So there's just, I mean, we have no way of them having a way station from between here and the moon, so obviously they can't load up with more fuel and get there, no gas station, so to speak. So now, the Soviets, they may know this now, but why do you think they just capitulated after their rocket crashed and they weren't able to bring the rocks back from the moon? They just seemed to fold up and go home. Why do you think that is?
Because they realized it could not be done. And that's why. I mean, why hasn't the Soviet Union in 40 years put a man on the moon? They haven't. Why hasn't Japan? Japan has had video cell phones for 5 years now, and we still don't have them in the United States. Why hasn't Japan put a man on the moon? Why hasn't any country, including our own, put a man beyond Earth orbit since 1972? Mm-hmm. The reason is because of the Van Allen radiation belt. It's this intense field of radiation that starts about 1,000 miles up and extends another 25,000 miles. Every manned mission in human space travel history has been below the radiation belt except going to the moon. And we come to find out that, Tricky Dick was president and the Vietnam War was going on and the Soviets were beating us in the space race, and we bluffed. We pretended to be more advanced than we really were. The longer it goes on, from the time they allegedly went to the moon, the more preposterous the notion seems that in 1969 they could land a vehicle on another world and with computing power that's so much slower than today, synchronize a vehicle going from 0 miles an hour to 4,000 miles an hour to meet up with the command module allegedly orbiting the moon. Mm-hmm. I figured that if it's off by probably 1/4 of a second, they're going to miss the docking and die.
And they're going to go off into space.
6 times they never killed anybody.
I never thought of that.
The space shuttle has killed 14 people going 200 miles above the Earth.
Sure. Yeah, I never thought of that computing power. It's true, because think of what
they would have to be so perfectly synchronized. Yeah. And the computing power back then was so slow, there's no way it could have been done.
Right. Bart, one day, though, they're going to have a machine or some kind of a craft that will be able to get through the Van Allen radiation belt, get to the moon, and realize there's no flag and no lunar rover sitting on the surface of the moon.
When we come back, Bart, we're going to show another clip, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this faking of actually being halfway to the moon. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back.